Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Dr.NostalgiaGamer. Today I'm going to be doing a review of Nintendo's family computer, or the Famicom. Okay, so let's start off with a little bit of history of the Famicom. So Famicom stands for Family Computer. It was a console designed by Nintendo after the success of their arcade cabinets. They decided to make a home system. So it was called the Family Computer, and it was shortened to the Famicom. It was released in Japan on July 15th of 1983, and it originally cost 14,800 yen, which translates to $186 US at the time, which, including inflation, is a little bit over $400 in today's money. Although sales started off very slow due to some hardware issues, it picked up and actually became one of the best-selling consoles in Japan at the time, which is when Nintendo decided to port the console to the US, which created the Nintendo Entertainment System. This console is what you have to thank for the fact that Nintendo ever released the NES in the US to begin with. So let's take a look at the actual physical look of this actual system. As you can tell, it is a combination between sort of an off-white color and red. That was the Japanese color for the NES in Japan. In the US, we got gray and sort of whitish color, I guess. I don't know. But in Japan, they did red and white. Now, whether or not that was to match maybe the Japanese flag, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that's what it is. But anyway, so on the front of the console, you can see there that it says Family Computer, trademark. And in the corner, we've got Nintendo logo down on the bottom there. On the top of it here, we have the power switch. As you can see, most of the writing on the console is actually in Japanese, because that's where this was sold, although there is English, such as the word power, and the word eject, and the word reset there. The power button is just a simple up and down switch. You just flip it up, and that turns it on, down turns it off, and you can see that there's a little orange line that appears there when you turn it on. On the other side here, we have a reset button, just like on most of these consoles back then, and that's just a simple push. Nothing special about that. On the top here, we actually have an eject button that's sort of like the eject button that was built into the SNES, except it doesn't work as well. I'd read somewhere that, because I was wondering myself why you really needed this, because the Famicom actually is easy enough to pull games out of where you don't really need an eject button. In fact, the eject button to me makes it feel like I'm going to break the console or break the game trying to get a game out. I read somewhere that the creator thought that kids would find it fun to use the eject button to get games out, so that's why they added it. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway. So that's it with that. On the front of it, there's a little extension port here. This little expansion port is actually where you would put extra controllers and stuff, because, like I'll show you in a minute, the Famicom did not have plug-ins for controllers. The controllers were built in, so you had this little port here that would let you plug in extra accessories to it. As I said before, there are controllers built into it. So on the back of the console, you can see that the Player 1 and Player 2 controllers are actually hardwired into the system, which is a good thing for collectors who don't want to have to worry about buying extra controllers, but it's a bad thing for collectors who end up, unfortunately, getting a system where the controllers go bad, because then it requires soldering to fix. So this is the Player 1 controller. As you can see in the top left corner, we've got a 1 Roman numeral. We got a normal D-pad, just like on the NES, select and start, just like on the NES, and a B and an A button, just like on the NES. So this is actually exactly where the NES controller model came from, was actually this controller, because it's the exact same thing as the NES, just with a different color scheme. On this particularly, we've got gold, black, and red are the color schemes. Unfortunately, they designed it with the controller wire coming out of the side, which is really annoying, because when you want to hold the controller, unlike the NES where it comes out of the top and it's easy to hold, with this wire coming out of the side, the only way I found to comfortably do it, at least with me personally, was to put it between my pointer and middle finger and let it sit there while I play. But it's still really annoying, and it kind of rubs on your hand after a while if you've played it for a little while. The back of Player 1 doesn't have anything on it. Surprisingly, there's no Nintendo branding or anything. I guess they figured that since the controls are hardwired, there was no need to brand it. And then you've got the little parts where you can take it apart there with some screws. Player 2 controller, surprisingly, is actually a little bit different. You'll notice, first of all, there's no start and select button. So in any game where there's a Player 1 and Player 2, the only way to pause or to use the start and select buttons is Player 1 has to do it, which I imagine probably caused some fights back in the day. So the Player 2 controller's got the 2 Roman numeral there. It's got the normal D-pad, missing the start and select, and then you've got the B and A. You've also got the normal black red and gold color pattern. But you'll notice at the top there, we've got something that says mic, and it's got a little box here. And then off to the left, you've got a volume button. But I was really confused about that at first. In fact, actually, I had to do research about it before I even knew what it was. I'd never heard of that before. I found out that the creators of the Famicom decided to put a microphone built into Player 2 controller. That way you could hold the microphone up to your mouth and you could talk into it, and certain games would respond to the fact that there was volume coming through it. I actually have tested this with some of my games, and actually, from what I can tell, every game does it. If you turn the volume control all the way up and then you talk into it, you can actually hear your voice coming through in really poor quality, I might add, coming through the TV. So that's pretty cool. But it actually didn't work with very many games. Like, I think there were only like 10 or so games total that even used it at all. In almost all of those games, it was very, very minimally used. It was like 1 or 2 parts of the entire game where you would use that. Like, I know in the original Zelda, there were something called pole ghosts, I believe, and you could walk into this dungeon and you could scream into the microphone and they would all die in one go. You could kill like 5 enemies in one go without having to fight them. So that was pretty cool. But this thing also causes a lot of feedback issues when you're trying to record. I noticed that for whatever reason, mine, it's gotten a lot better, but when I first got it, every time I went to use this thing, it was a really loud hum, and I always found out it was because of this controller, because whenever I would get anywhere near controller 2, it would hum really loud, but when I would get away from it, it wouldn't hum anymore. So I don't know. Back of it, just like the other one, no logo, no branding or anything, and then you've got the screws on the back of it. So, on the top of it here, you've got a little flap. This is where your games go. So that's it. There's your pin connector that goes to your games. It's got a little dust flap that keeps it from, I guess, keeps dust out when you're not using it actively. To me, I don't really see why this is super necessary, but I guess it was just sort of a different way to do it, instead of having like on the NES where you've got the front flap, or having on the SNES where you've got the 2 little pieces that move out of the way when you plug in a controller. But then you've got a little vent here on the top of it that doesn't really do anything. The sides of it actually have a little holster for each controller, where the controller fits down inside of there, and it keeps the controllers from falling out. That I actually really, really like, because rather than having these controllers hardwired and having to like sit them on top of the system and hope they don't fall off, there's a specific little holster that they will sit in so that you don't have to worry about losing them. And the same thing goes for the Player 2 has its own holster too, so that's actually really nice. So on the back of the console, so let's take a look at that, you've got the Player 2 input where it's hardwired, you've got the AC adapter input, you've got a TV and a game input. I don't know for sure exactly what this was for. I'm assuming that maybe the AC adapter back then, you had to switch between whether or not you wanted to use the TV or the game. It wouldn't do it automatically. I don't know, maybe that's it. Then you've got, interestingly enough, people in the US who've never seen this before will find this interesting. In Japan, they don't use Channel 3 and Channel 4 like we do here in the US. In Japan, they use Channel 1 and Channel 2. And there are no US TVs, at least that I know of, that use Channel 1 and Channel 2. So we'll talk about that later. It makes it much more challenging to get this to work on a US TV. Then you've got the little RF switch port, which is just like the one on the NES, and then you've got the Player 1 controller port. So, and on the bottom of the system, pretty plain. You've got 2 grooves here. This is where, if you had the Famicom disk system, this is where the Famicom disk system would kind of lock in. You've got 4 little rubber feet on the bottom of it that keep it from moving around. You've got another vent on the bottom. We've got some Japanese writing here talking about the AC adapter that you should use. It's telling you to only use the HVC-D002, which is the one that came with the Famicom. You've got a serial number here, and then we've got the logo on the bottom of the system, HVC-001, Nintendo, made in Japan, and all that good stuff for the actual console itself. So in order to power this bad boy up, you might be thinking, and please do research on this first if you're looking to get a Famicom, and you don't already know this, but you might be thinking, oh hey, that looks like the same exact input that the NES, the model number NES-002 uses, that power adapter, and it is. This is the exact same power end that works for the NES. And you might be thinking, oh sweet, well I've got an extra one of those laying around, I can use it, but do not do that. You'll notice, I don't know if you can read this, but if you've got one, you can read it on your own. The NES had a built-in step-down converter inside of it that would transform the voltage from AC to DC. The Famicom does not have that. So, if you input this and plug it into the wall, into your Famicom, you're going to be inputting AC voltage, alternative current voltage, into a system that takes direct current only. What will happen if you do that is, first of all, you'll fry and you'll probably break and completely lose the ability to use your system. I have actually also heard reports of Famicom systems blowing up because of this. Most likely it probably just smoked and smelled really bad. But anyway, so don't do that. You don't want to go you don't want to go drop money on a system that's hard to get in the US anyway, and then pay shipping to get it over here, and then end up screwing it up because you used the wrong AC adapter. One thing I noticed on eBay when I was getting mine was that very few sellers include AC adapters. When I asked one of the sellers why he wouldn't include an AC adapter, because he actually had one, he told me he would sell it to me separately. He said that the mass of them made the shipping costs go up, and that he couldn't include it in the package without making the shipping cost even higher, which I think is load of BS. But anyway, don't use the NES adapters. However, not all is lost if you didn't get one with yours, or if the one you're looking at doesn't have one. You can also use the Sega Genesis Model 1 adapter. And if you want the number, it's the MK1602. This guy, I don't know if you guys can see that, but this guy outputs DC current, which is what you want. This thing does not have a step-down converter like the NES does, so you have to output DC current. And it does have the correct end on it as well. So this will not fry your system. I know this for a fact. At first I was really worried to try it because I figured that it was going to be, there was somebody trolling on a website, it was going to make me burn up my system. But it works great, and I'm excited to have it. And by the way, this is the same thing. The same thing goes for the Famicom disk system. This fits it, the NES version, don't use it. Only use either the original Famicom, the HVC-002, or a Sega Genesis Model 1 adapter, which is the MK1602. But anyway, so those will work, but the Nintendo ones will not. And if you're thinking about the actual AV component, this thing just uses the normal phono plug, like all the Nintendo. So this is actually the NES box, the one that came with the NES. It uses the same normal phono plug, which can be plugged in using the normal coaxial cable. So that's it for the actual the hardware, I guess, of this particular system. So let's get into how to actually hook up everything and get it running on your TV. Alright, well, let's flip her on. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, see, so you'll notice that nothing's happening. Well, everything's plugged in right, so it's not because you plugged in something wrong that this happens. What you have to do, and in my case I have everything connected to a VCR, so it's a little bit easier for me. But so you got to make sure that number one, your Famicom is on channel 1, number 2, that your AC adapter, sorry, not your AC, your AV adapter, if your RF converter has a different channel set, put it on channel 3. And then number 2 is you're going to have to take your VCR and you're going to have to change it to channel 95 or 96, depending on how your TV works. Some people have really good luck with channel 95, some people have really good luck with channel 96. So here's channel 95, and there we go. It's working. So I know that it's weird, but it's not because your Famicom's broken, it's not because your TV won't work. You just have to find, it's sort of a trial and error until you can get it to work. Okay, so now I'm going to be doing some gameplay footage of some stuff. I may not be talking a whole lot during this, I'm just going to do some quick gameplay. I'll probably do some more in-depth reviews of some of the games that I have for the Famicom, specifically the ones that are Japanese-only releases. Those are really the cool ones to collect for the Famicom. Having games like Super Mario Bros. That were released on the NES, the games are exactly the same, so there really isn't any reason to review that game, but I'll show you some game footage just to give you guys an idea of what the Famicom looks like. Alright guys, well that's it for this episode of Dr. Nostalgia Gamer. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys next time. Say bye, Famicom. Bye-bye.